One of the earliest descriptions of baptism in our tradition is Vitae Spiritualis Janua. That means the door of the spiritual life. Baptism is the way in. Baptism is the foundation. It's the condition for the possibility of even having a spiritual life. And see, to grasp that is to grasp something really basic about Christianity. Because Christianity is about so much more than being a nice person or having a heart of gold or doing the right thing, as important as those are. Let's face it, a pagan, a non-believer, a Jew, a Muslim could be all those things. What does it mean to be a Christian? It means to be grafted onto Christ. It means to share in His very being, to become a member of His mystical body, to participate in the relationship that He has to His Father, to share the divine life. At the heart of Christianity is not just moral goodness, as important as that is. At the heart of it is divinization, becoming a sharer in God's own life. You see now why it's so important that someone is baptized in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. From all eternity, the Father and Son look at each other and they fall in love. They breathe forth their love for each other. That shared breath of the Father and the Son is the Holy Spirit. To be baptized, therefore, to share in the relationship between the Father and Son, is to be in the Spirit. It's to live a spiritual life. This is why baptism is all about grace. It's all about this unmerited, undeserved love that God has shown to us by drawing us into His life. We don't earn it. We don't do something to get it. Rather, through God's love, we are drawn into His life. What did Jesus say in the gospel? But it's not you who've chosen me. It's I who've chosen you. See how important that is? Because so often today we think of the spiritual life is our quest for God. Well, there's something to that. I mean, we do have a kind of sense of searching for God. But that's not what's basic in Christianity. Christianity is about God's search for us, that God has found us and has now grafted us onto Christ so we can share in His life and become divinized. That's what baptism is finally about. Now, as a derivation, we can say, baptism is also about the washing away of original sin. Now, it's an idea that's kind of controversial today. People say original sin, some old-fashioned idea. Not at all. Think of it this way. We are born, all of us, we're born into a deeply dysfunctional environment, produced by millennia and eons of human dysfunction, bad behavior, sin. Think of all the cruelty and hatred and violence and injustice that's happened over all of the millennia of human history, producing, as it were, a poisonous atmosphere. We're born into that. We didn't choose it, but we breathe it in, almost literally. It's in our nerves, it's in our blood, it's in our bones from the time we're born. Which is why the comparison to a baby born with an addiction is a good comparison. Think of a baby who's born having inherited his mother's addiction to cocaine. Well, we're not going to blame the baby for that, but we'd be foolish to deny that the baby really is addicted, is really born with this problem. Or think of a kid born into a dysfunctional family, characterized by alcohol abuse or by physical abuse. Well, all that child knows is this strange, dysfunctional world. In both cases, something has to come radically from the outside to change, to lift them out, to transform them. That's a good analogy with baptism. All of us human beings are members of a dysfunctional family. Chesterton said, we're all in the same boat and we're all seasick. We can't solve our own problem, but rather through God's grace and love, we are grafted onto the divine life. And that's why we say that baptism saves us, redeems us, makes us really into a new creature. Last point. Notice the relationship now between baptism and the other sacraments. If baptism is the way in, it's what makes the other sacraments make sense. Baptism gives me the divine life. Okay. All life needs to be sustained through food. It needs to be fed, nourished. Hence, I need the Eucharist. Day in, day out, week in, week out, steadily to nourish the divine life I get through baptism. I can lose the divine life through mortal sin, a sin that is so opposed to God's life that it can't tolerate it. Well, I need to be cleansed of that sin. I need to be restored through a kind of new baptism, and that's penance. The great gifts of baptism need to be confirmed. They need to be strengthened, hence the sacrament of confirmation. Life, ordinary life, is much more than just biology. It's also a sense of purpose, direction, mission. Same is true in the spiritual order. We have the basic spiritual life that comes from being grafted onto Christ. But then that life needs to be directed, needs to have a purpose. Hence we have the sacraments of mission, which are marriage and holy orders. Last rites. As we prepare to move from this life to the next, we are strengthened for the journey. All those sacraments are made possible by baptism, the door to the spiritual life. That's why without baptism, we can't really be pleasing to God. We can't live the spiritual life. When Jesus himself was baptized, he heard the voice from heaven. You are my beloved Son, in you I am well pleased. Everyone who's baptized, grafted on to the Son, sons and daughters in the Son, should be able to hear the same voice, saying the same thing.